What's up, party people? My name's Chris, and I'm a bookaholic. Well, okay, so here's the scoop. A wrap up for January. It was a great month for me. I got about 6 books finished, and there are a number that are very close to being finished, but I figured I would just kind of give my end of January wrap up. Here's the first. I finished the Andy Serkis audio narration for The Return of the King. I had read the physical copy, the first one, for The Lord of the Rings, and then I did the audio narration for the second two. This is the first thing I wrapped up for the month of January, I believe, and it was incredible. And actually, I confess that I had not read this as a younger kid. I did read The Hobbit, and I loved it, and then I just never got around to The Lord of the Rings, oddly. I mean, I knew the story to a degree, but really not that much. And then, of course, the movies came out, and that was phenomenal, and I loved it. And so I did decide I have to make sure I read this series. And the narration, the audio narration, I thought I'll give it a try. And it was just perfection. And I think I'm now jaded when it comes to audio narration because Andy Serkis is just so good. I loved it. And one of the funny things is that my wife and the kids and I, we were talking, and the question came up, well, what actually happened, whatever happened to Saruman? And what's interesting is that the book answers it. It ends, and I understand why the movies end where it ends, but in the book it actually continues on. There's some other things. A little bit anticlimactic, honestly, in the grand scheme of things, but, it's a nice cool down. So this was pretty cool, and I thought, exceptionally thorough in the way that the whole is wrapped up. So anyway, phenomenal. Please, of course, right? Then this was kind of a slow build. I kind of slowly, just little bits and pieces, and I enjoyed it a lot. And actually, Guards was, for me, probably my first completion of a Terry Pratchett book, so I intend to read a whole bunch more. And obviously, he has dozens and dozens, and I'm fascinated with his life. I've mentioned before that I love the biography that came out on him, and it was really something that obviously I wanted to make sure that I dived into his work, because he's really a legendary figure, and I think often misunderstood. People either love him or hate him, and I do lean more towards the love. So this was a really good experience for me, and I'm glad to have wrapped it up, and I will definitely be reading, a lot more, and really experiencing the whole of Discworld. That's kind of my goal. Another book that I finished up this year was Thomas Sweaterleash's The Gone World. And I don't own a physical copy of that. I think I had bought it in a digital format. But that was, I believe, the first book that I finished for the new year. And I read that book because of some booktube kind of suggestions, and it was a little bit out of nowhere, but this book was phenomenal. And that, without giving away any spoilers, a lot of this is dealing with, there's a mystery involved, there's a murder, and but then you find there are other things that have happened, traumatic events that have taken place, and then there are certain things that are already understood and discovered within our world that don't even seem like it's possible, but it is. So there's this kind of secret in the know type of people that are trying to really ultimately stop the end of the world. And so you have a little bit of time jump kind of scenarios that are going on, and it gets into some cycles and some loops, and the possibility of ruining everything sooner rather than later. And is it possible to stop this impending doom? It's certainly an apocalyptic type of book, but done in a way that is very kind of science fiction really matched up well with the real world experiences. What I especially loved about this book is it took place in an area that I'm very familiar with. We lived for 13 years right outside of the Pittsburgh area, and so it mentions, places in the surrounding area of Pennsylvania as well as West Virginia, and even talks about the Steubenville police, which I thought was hilarious. And so all that to say, I liked it so much I decided to go out and try to see what else he's written, and so tomorrow might be something in my future. So we'll see what I did there. Not even on purpose. And that was, to me, a very satisfying way to begin the new year. I kind of like it when I'm introduced to an author and to a book that I'd not really heard about, and then all of a sudden it just kind of clicks. And that was, for me, that was the case. It really clicked. And I do think that there is a few things in it that maybe rob it from being the ultimate perfection in terms of that type of book, but overall highly entertaining and very well written, and there were some things in it that I thought were kind of like awesome. The next book that I read, and probably like such a surprise, was the book We Are the Dead by Mike Shackle. And this is definitely getting a lot of buzz, and it should, because this is phenomenal. And I loved it, and really it's kind of this Asian-inspired, almost the world's going to end, again, kind of this apocalyptic kind of looming doom, and it's impossible to stop it. And the existing infrastructure of those that would battle, the big bad wolf, they're completely, going to be incapable of doing that. And a series of events take place, and now this existing world finds themselves in a scenario that they never imagined, and it just seems hopeless. And you're introduced to a variety of characters that are super less than ideal. They do not have what it takes. They are not the right stuff, it seems. And what I love about Shackle is that he's going to take people that it just is, nobody would pick them first on the playground, second, third. They're all probably last picked characters, if you will. They're certainly not starting lineup. They're riding the bench. You get the point. And the bad is really bad, and it's overwhelming, and impending doom is upon them. And this story begins, and I think that really what happened is I decided I'm going right into the second, and so I finished up here in January A Fool's Hope. And this, it's, I don't know how to say it without just saying it, but it's one book. You break up. There's no, like, ultimate resolution. You don't feel like warm and fuzzy, and now we're going into a new adventure. Everything was tight and clean. Oh, no. When you go right out of We Are the Dead into A Fool's Hope, you're there. And so my recommendation is absolutely do not wait before going into the second, which is probably why, and I'll... it's not a big secret, but I'm going to go into the book until the last here for February. I thought maybe I could get that done in January, but that's just not the case. So without going into this too much, because I'll do that for my February reads, but that's going to happen. And partly because I do feel like, and I think it's probable that this book probably needs to go right after this. And that's what I find sometimes can happen, is if you like let go the thread of being in the zone with a series, then you're going to end up ultimately forgetting things. And so I know a number of people out there reread the books before the last one comes out, and it's understandable, but personally, I'm maybe not the fastest reader on BookTube, that's for sure. I can see the reason why a lot of people don't even begin a series until it's done. They want to just kind of go one to one to one to one. But if you get a second book that is not really clicking, it's really hard to finish that series. And so, to me, the awesome thing is that this is as good as this. And you're probably thinking maybe it is a little better because by that point you're invested in these characters and you know them. Well, the last book I read, and it's kind of a little bit of a, it's off the beaten path for the norm of what I put on this channel, but I did think I'd make mention to this. I finished this book. It's called Teachings for an Unbelieving World, Newly Discovered Reflections on Paul's Sermon at the Areopagus by John Paul II, St. John Paul II. So this was when he was Archbishop, Karol Wojtyła, and I loved this book, but I can honestly say that even for people that are inclined to be interested in reading religious books, I'm not sure I would 100% recommend this to a person unless I knew a little bit more about what they liked and why they wanted to explore this. But let me just give you the 411 on this. Not that many of you will care, but for those of you who do, Vatican II was an incredible council that many people still to this day love and utilize the writings from. I do, specifically in a lot of the theology classes that I teach, and there is one of these documents here called Nostra Aetate in Vatican II, and that's what. In a lot of ways, that's what is being referenced a lot by St. John Paul II, right, in, comparison or, complementing the scriptural passage when Paul is preaching that famous sermon at the Areopagus, where he basically sees all of these statues to all of these unknown gods, or all of these different gods, and then they have a statue specifically to the unknown God. And St. Paul, will say, basically, that's the one I want to talk to you about, that unknown God. You have that statue there. Let's talk about that God. And that's what he does. And in a lot of ways, Nostra Aetate complements that scriptural passage and what the church was trying to do in the 60s, specifically reaching out and talking about the role of the Catholic Church in dialogue and discourse with people of different religions. And there's some really great things. And I require this document in all of my classes. I think it's so important. It is Ave Maria Press, and all that to simply say, if you're a fan of St. John Paul II, if you're interested in interreligious dialogue, this is the book for you. That's what you want to check out. So, I gave it, personally, a 5 out of 5. It's really hard to not give 5 stars to someone who's a saint, but I do understand why someone might read that and think, I don't know if that resonates with me. So, but if you're super interested in how do we communicate with people who believe things differently than we do, and what does the church have to say about interreligious dialogue, and how does that reconcile with maybe some of the things that we've seen, by the way, and the behavior of people. If you juxtapose that with scripture in this document, you'll see that there's a lot of room for dialogue and a lot of ways that we can learn from one another, and I found it to be beautiful. Okay, so those are some of the books that I read. I almost finished a few others, but I'll talk about that in the February reads. So thanks so much. I love this stuff, and I hope you do too.